Since the day it was announced in 2020, the Canon C70 has always had my attention, with a design that blurs the lines between mirrorless camera and cinema camera. I am definitely late to the party here, but I finally got an opportunity to test it out. So in this video, I want to answer the questions: how does the image quality compare to modern day cinema cameras, and is it worth buying in 2024? Why now am I testing the C70? I've always wanted to see what this camera can do, and the timing and opportunity finally arrived, so I jumped on it. When it comes to creating videos, there are a lot of different factors that make a camera good. And what you'll see across this review is what the C70 does. It does extremely well. But just like any camera, it is not all good news. There are actually some really big surprises here that you do not expect from a company like Canon. We hear so many filmmakers telling us that we do not need the latest cameras. A lot of people like to use the term GAS, which stands for Gear Acquisition Syndrome. I guess that makes the ultimate question for the C70: can a 4-year-old camera keep up with the latest and greatest of today? Let's find out. So for my short time with the camera, I had 3 different lenses. One of those being a 15 to 35 RF mount, and the other 2 being a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200 older EF mount. Unfortunately, I did not have the adapter that gives you the full frame field of view, but I did have the adapter that gives you variable ND filters. I did only have the camera for 3 whole days, and that is definitely not long enough. I do like to class myself as someone who knows their way around a video camera, but to truly get to know something like the C70, you definitely need longer. So if I do miss anything in this review, please don't be afraid to drop that in the comments below. The balance and feel of the camera is right up there with some of the best I have ever used. It takes everything from the design style of, say, an FX3 and the same of an FX6 and kind of mixes those together. The camera itself is really pretty to look at, if that stands for anything. And I think overall, from a design perspective, Canon have really nailed this camera. But where does that leave us for functionality? To say this camera is like nothing we have seen before, once you do put that top handle on it, it does feel like a real cinema camera. And to say Canon utilised the body is an understatement. From whichever angle you approach this camera, there is some sort of functionality or function button. The design and button placement just feels really well thought about, and this continues into the menu. The menu is laid out in an order that just feels really logical. It's not as simple as, say, a Blackmagic menu, but it's definitely better than the crazy stuff we get from Sony. So what do you get when you mix a really well balanced, really well designed, really functionally laid out, and also menus that are easy to learn? The answer is speed. To say I only had the C70 for 3 days, the speed in which I was capturing really good cinematic footage was like something that I've never seen before. This camera is a real joy to use and actually makes shooting and creating fun. This does take me on to my first negative. To say this camera is part of Canon's cinema lineup, you'd expect it to be pretty flawless in terms of build quality. Do not get me wrong, this camera does not feel cheap. For, say, 90% of the build, it is really good. There is just little standout things. For example, the touchscreen and the way it flips out just feels a little flimsy. It's great for colour and sharpness, but when you are outside in sunlight, it is pretty useless. You can't see a thing. So you definitely need some sort of like EVF solution for daytime shooting. And there are just a few other things. Another one is that the jog wheel feels a little plasticky and kind of wobbles. It's just not what you'd expect from a Canon cinema camera. I guess this is the very bottom of the range, and maybe they are just trying to keep as much profit in the camera as possible. The inputs and outputs are pretty great also. This has mini XLRs instead of the full-size ones, which is not ideal, but I will accept this as the body design is so good. And to go with those mini XLRs, we do get auto gain, which is a pretty underrated feature in any camera. We are limited to a full-size HDMI for outputting video, which is a bit of a downer, as this camera actually has an SDI port on the body, but it is solely just for timecode. This is obviously purposely done to stop cannibalizing Canon's more expensive cinema cameras. I would describe the codecs and frame rates in this camera as okay. You can go all the way from MP4 to XAVCI, and now with the recent update you can even capture internal RAW. That should pretty much cover you for all the different file sizes you're going to need. For resolution we are maxed out at 4K, but for frame rates it does go all the way up to 120 frames. This seems pretty good on paper, but when you remember this is a Super 35 sensor, I guess comparing it to a lot of the new full frame sensors, this is now pretty standard. So let's get on to the AF system inside this camera. I remember the days when Canon was so far ahead with the autofocus for video, but this is a great example and just goes to show if you don't keep innovating or spending the money on R&D, how fast you can fall behind. The AF system is good and usable, but it is definitely behind what we are getting from Sony at the moment. I would even go as far as saying that it is behind what Panasonic are now offering. It works better with the newer RF glass than say through the adapter using EF glass, and this is to be expected. You can rely on it and use it just fine, but it is just a little bit behind the standards that have been set of today. This camera has no IBIS, but what it does have is digital stabilization. This comes with a 1.1 crop, but I'm totally fine with that, and it definitely works better than I initially expected. Again, the running theme for this video, it is definitely behind, say, Panasonic's new cameras, and even behind Sony's latest cameras, but I would describe it as usable. So let's talk about the fun stuff, image quality. This camera is definitely one of the most fun cameras I've ever used. It's something you can just grab and go, but none of that really matters if the image quality does not keep up with all the latest cameras of today. Well, I am here to tell you that it definitely does. The colours straight out of camera are pretty good. They're a bit muted, there's not much colour in them, but they are damn accurate. Its strongest feature is definitely dynamic range. When you are not in one of those higher frame rate modes, this camera enables its DGO technology. Simply put, this just allows us to capture more information in the shadows and highlights. And it also allows those shadows to stay really clean and noise free, and also rolls off the highlights really nice. If I had to say some negatives about the image quality, it would be the way it resolves detail. It's definitely a sharp camera and captures loads of information, but comparing it to the newer kind of full frame higher resolution sensors, and this being a Super 35mm with maximum 4K resolution, it does start to feel a little bit muddy if you kind of punch in and pixel peep around people's faces or just objects in general. Do not just take my word for it though, let's do some side by side with some of the more modern cameras that I own. Right before we get into those though, if you want to find out about the latest in film tech and hear my advice from 15 years of creating videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button not to miss my weekly uploads. So right now I'm going to compare the C70 to some modern day cameras. What you are watching right now is the Panasonic S5 Mark II. I'm also going to include the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame. They will all be using the same lens. I will adapt to it, and that will be the Canon 24-70. I will white balance them and shoot at native ISO on all cameras. So let's see how they compare. The first camera here is the C70. This looks pretty good, but when you compare it to the next camera, you'll see there's a few differences. We have the S5 II here. There's more colour in the skin, and it is resolving the detail, just looking at my eyes, a lot better. Moving on to the Blackmagic full frame, and again, this is resolving the detail, and I believe is the best image out the bunch. Comparing all three, I would go Blackmagic, then S5 II, then C70. I just think the full frame cameras are resolving the detail a little bit better. I said in the intro to this video that what the C70 does, it does extremely well. So when it comes to the speed of capturing cinematic footage, then this camera truly is the king. So if you are someone who would like a camera that is fun and also allows you to create cinematic videos without the equipment getting in the way, then this is definitely the camera for you. I have been seeing these on the used market for around 3 to 4K USD. So I think that is a really good value purchase for a lot of people in today's market. And if you want a faster and easier way to make your footage more filmic, watch this video here.